Hello, everyone. I am Neeru Bali. I'm a career and university counselor. Today's topic of liberal arts is what I'm most fascinated about in our speaker series event. The multidisciplinary and broad spectrum approach in this type of education system is increasingly becoming popular in India's universities and colleges. Today, we have our guest speaker from the coveted Ashoka University, Mr. Harpreet Singh. He is the Assistant Director of Outreach Program. Mr. Harpreet has been in the education management since 2012. Currently, he is heading North India Relations and Engagements for Ashoka University. Well, he is a very well-known figure in all the schools of North India that I'm aware of. And now we are going to learn all the ins and outs of liberal arts education from him. Over to you, Harpreet.
Thank you, Niru. Thank you all for coming in for a session today on liberal education. Liberal arts, as widely known. And that's the difference which we want to create after this session is done to understand if it is arts or education and how you should be pursuing it in terms of your academic future is concerned. My name is Harpreet. I intend to cover this in a manner that this is not Google knowledge. It is intended to give you more insights as an insider and hope this session helps you. Later, at one point of time, the student of Ashoka would also be joining us for this session, would be able to use her understanding of liberal education and Ashoka, and we'll be able to cover a lot of aspects regarding liberal education. So as I stated, intent is to help you more. Participation is welcome. Let's begin. So if you hear the word liberal arts or liberal education, there are a lot of myths around in the industry. And one of the myth is that it's a certain subject. And it is not. It's not a certain subject which you study or a certain degree that you get if you do a program in liberal arts. So that's why we have started refraining ourselves from calling it liberal arts. We now call it more as liberal education, or we call it as liberal arts and sciences, just to ensure that students don't get a sense that it is a program which is arts. Arts is a wider word, which technically means combination of a lot of skills required for life. And sciences technically is also a part of it. But because of our education system, which we have done in schooling, we understand arts or humanities as a very different stream altogether. That is not the case when you discuss liberal arts. So let's go back to the basics of liberal and start from there. So what good place to start than dictionary? So if you go and check dictionary, it's technically willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own open to new ideas. That's what the word liberal means. But when you put it to education, it means concerned with broadening a person's general knowledge and experience rather than with the technical or professional training. If this is still too complicated for you, these 4-5 columns should help you understand better. Liberal education should truly be an opportunity which gives you the freedom to choose what you want to study. In other words, you could be any background. You could be a sciences, commerce, humanities. It should not make any difference. You should have the right to choose what you want to study further. For instance, when I was in class 10th, my marks decided what streams I chose in class 11th and class 12th. And at that time, the conversation was fairly simple. 80 above would do sciences, 60 above would do commerce, whatever left would do arts. At that time, that was what it was known. Now it is known as humanities. Now times have changed. Students above 90 are also choosing humanities. But at liberal education, what we are saying is, why should a percentage or why what you have chosen to study in class 11th and 12th decide what you do at an undergrad? In other words, you could be a student of humanities, but if you want to study biology, without have ever studied biology in class 11th and class 12th, or without being a part of sciences, you should be allowed to do that. You could be a student of sciences. If you want to study philosophy, psychology, international relations, you should be allowed to do that. But why even restrict it over there? Why can't create combinations? Why can't you do psychology with computer sciences, physics, and so on, right? So that's the first element which we want you to understand. Liberal education is truly freedom to choose what you want to study, irrespective of your background. right? So again, thus it automatically explains it's a study of natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. It is not a certain stream, but in no way we are saying they are individual streams, right? It's a combination of a lot of things, and I'll explain it further as we present. I'll also introduce you to a concept which is interdisciplinary approach. Uh, let's take an example. Till class 10th, I was a part of a multidisciplinary program in which I was studying multiple subjects, but I was studying those multiple subjects linear in nature, right? Why? Because the English teacher would come teach English and go, the maths teacher would come teach maths and go. They were not interlinking their conversations. How do I convert the same thing into an interdisciplinary program? Well, when an English teacher comes to class and says this book is written by an author XYZ, historically, this is the context of this book, psychologically, this is what the author was thinking while writing the book, then you started seeing one thing from multiple dimensions at the same time. If I have to give another example, I'm drinking a glass of water. Water, if I ask you, it's a study of biology, geography, history, also philosophy, psychology. So if you have to truly understand water and you only understand the chemical composition as H2O, you can't say that you've understood water, right? Similarly goes with what's happening with things around us. COVID, is it a biological challenge or a challenge which has to do with chemistry because there might be a drug which could be produced from that perspective? Or is it more psychological, international relations, philosophy, and so on? It's a combination of a lot of things. For you to work on something as COVID, you can't be a student which is linear in thought and say you got it all. That does not work in the real world. So, an interdisciplinary approach is something which is the education for the future. Well, when I say this, I have to go back in time and also reflect that was the case in the past too. If you check what kind of an education did your Raja Maharaja had, they did not have a linear form of education. A Raja Maharaja was still trained on Shastra, music, theatre, and so on, right? They might have chosen individual skill sets which they excelled more on than others, but they really had a capacity to look at things from one multiple dimensions at the same time. That is an interdisciplinary approach. I hope you understand this concept. If you've understood the three above, you'll understand now it's a education which allows you breadth and depth. If you see traditional universities within India or education within India has primarily focused only on depth. And the reason it does not work anymore is because you don't get people outside and say, let's talk pure physics, or let's talk pure literature, or let's talk pure computer sciences. Things don't work like that. And that probably was the requirement a few years back. But in today's DNA culture, you don't really see that happening. So you got to be aware of that. Again, it's an education which focuses on critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and social awareness. That's what primarily should mean in terms of liberal education for you. But the question now which comes is, why is there a need of liberal education and why are we speaking of it now? Well, for that, you have to understand some changes which have happened in the Industrial Revolution, especially from an Indian context. Because if you really see top 50 universities on earth, they're all technically liberal education. We don't say it or count them like that. We just say the top 50, we want to go there. But the reason they are top 50 is because they're a part of a liberal education background. So, what happened in an Indian context? Let's understand this. Well, in the fourth industrial revolution, the first revolution happened in the 18th century. Mechanization, steam, water power got introduced. Second was in the 19th century. Mass production of things started happening. Electricity got introduced. So things were moving at a faster pace. The third revolution happened in the 20th century. 21st century is experiencing the fourth one. Now, if you see the time when India adapted to education from the Britishers, that was the first and the second industrial revolution. And at that time, we needed to really build the country. So there is a certain skill set which was required, which needed to be passed on from one generation to the other, or from one set of students to the other. And those skill sets were not about critically thinking. Those skill sets were about given a task and just follow it, right? Those skill sets were more on the grounds of what we see as schools today. A certain way of functioning of what we see is what was the requirement at that time. Sadly, the industry moved ahead, but the education system got stuck. And that is the conversation why liberal education is happening now. in India, especially more than ever before. So, Ashoka University really initiated the conversation of liberal education within India. We're the first one to get it in. Though you would have universities who will say they got it prior to that. But the definition of liberal is not true with all. So, you got to understand that. So, that's the reason we're doing this conversation today. And why is this more relevant today? Because liberal education consciously ensures the changing environments of the industry and you being able to adapt to it. That's what it really offers. If you really see a few facts because of this changing of industrial revolution, you would see these are facts according to the World Economic Forum. 800 million jobs could disappear by automation by 2030. 35% of skills required by jobs today will change by 2030. 51.8% of work activity could already be done by robots within India. And 66% of Indian businesses are already looking for a different skill sets, which they did not look a few years ago. Now, why this is important for you is because this, as a student, is your challenge. This was not a challenge which your parents had or their parents had. This era of what we're seeing in the industry is so rapidly changing that whatever you intend to study should be relevant not just immediately after you complete your undergrad, but 20, 30, 50 years from that time. And we are seeing that industries are disappearing and new ones are coming, and you can't really imagine what would be there by the time you complete your undergrad. So, does a traditional education system cater to that? Answer is no. Thus, liberal is the conversation right now. Because of this, there are a few facts, again, you should know. What would disappear? Software development, financial planning advisory, tax advisory auditing, marketing research analysts, pilots, stock traders, architects, salespeople, hotel management. So, any job which is repetitive in nature would be redundant. It will not be required anymore. What skill sets would be required for the future? Well, there's a list, right? Critical thinking, creativity, interpersonal communication skills, emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, leadership skills, diverse and cultural intelligence, technology skills. So rather than knowing how to code, which is a software development aspect, which many people understand what computer sciences is, you would need to really know how to use a certain tool to create or solve a puzzle to create a software by itself. And you're already seeing examples of this in the industry because there are now companies who are going to schools and saying, we could train your student to create softwares or make a mobile app or stuff like that. And the reason they're able to do that at a 6 year or a student from class 6 onwards is because you don't really need coding anymore. You really need to be somebody who's comfortable with puzzle solving. There are already a bunch of codes which they have simplified in terms of language is concerned. And you simply need to assemble it in an array and see if it works for you. If it works, great. If it does not, remove the element which does not work. The software would tell you that. And you replace it with the one which is the most likely fit. Tweak it a bit, and you see if it's functioning for you or not. So that's where the world is heading. And you got to be aware of that. Again, one thing which everybody's saying which will survive is anything which is research, anything which is strategic jobs would survive. Empathy-centric jobs, because computers and machines can't do empathy. Creativity jobs, designing, writing, even music. Well, technically now even machines are doing this. But things like environmentalists, machines would not think about the environment, humans would have to. So these kind of jobs would really survive in the future. And why I'm saying this is important is because if you now see the emphasis is moving from knowledge absorption to being a critical thinker, to be a knowledge creator. And why is this case? Because if you see, my phone could probably know more in terms of knowledge than what I could ever know. So rather than having the capacity of absorbing that knowledge, I should rather have the capacity of use this tool and see what betterment I could do for the world. So I hope you understand this. Because of this, jobs like even being a lawyer, even being a doctor would be a challenge because I met a company in California who's trying to automate them both. So now, rather than going to a doctor based on his experience of symptoms of patients, he asks you questions and narrows it down to a certain possibility. And then, based on that possibility, he tells you get these tests done. And once you get these tests done, you show it to a doctor. The doctor says, this is your prescribed medication. All this could be done by automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, right? You got to be aware of that. Things are changing that fast. So be future ready. That's what liberal education really speaks of. So, what's a liberal university, you may ask? Because technically, I've just explained it's not a degree name that you get, right? So, it's not liberal in one format that you understand a university. Ashoka University is a liberal arts and sciences university, but liberal is in different aspects of it, right? The way it got set up, to its leadership, its vision, 21st century learning skills, diversity, the way we are evaluating students, faculty, be beyond rote learning, right? Multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, course flexibility, encouraging curiosity, not just making you employable, but really making you leaders. Student body being as important as the faculty, ensuring we're inclusive, research oriented, hugely funded. Culture of the university would also define if it's liberal or not, and really to go beyond grades. These are a few aspects what a liberal university could call itself liberal. Now, there'll be many players which will say we're liberal, but they only provide one or a few aspects of it. So, as a student, you got to do that research. And thankfully, a lot of data is available for you to be able to judge now if a university is truly liberal or it is just claiming a few tabs from here and calling themselves liberal. The reason I'm saying that is like the schools. If a school is named as an international school, that does not mean it follows an international curriculum. And you would have schools who will call themselves as international schools. Similarly, you'll have universities who will call themselves liberal, but are they truly liberal or not? You got to deep dive and identify doing research. In the absence of all this, students used to travel outside India, go to top universities across the world, without really knowing that they're really applying into a liberal arts and sciences university. But that's what top ranked schools, universities are in the world. Well, from an Ashoka perspective, few highlights which you should know is it would really give an opportunity for you to explore. You could be of any background. You could come to Ashoka, you could start, or go to any liberal education background, and you could start exploring. Choose this, like it, great, continue. Don't like it, drop it, choose something else. Create a combination, as I earlier given you examples. But again, there should be an opportunity for you to learn from the best. You should have faculties from top universities across the world from a liberal education background. It should really be an opportunity for you to go beyond rote learning. That is, being curious, being questionative, being a research oriented person always. All this really says a world class education, but it should also be affordable because it has to be inclusive. If there is no financial inclusion, then how would you ensure diversity? That's very important. More than grades, you can't be now evaluated in a liberal education sciences, arts and sciences university on merit, quota, or funding. It really has to evaluate a student much more beyond that. Reason is, when you talk about a researcher, it's not just marks. You might be great in reading books or grabbing that knowledge, but are you a person who could solve problems? Are you a person who's curious in nature? Are you a person who could deal with failure, deal with capacity of coming back from failure, right? Having the power of resilience, playing with teams, working with teams together, right? All these qualities are required for you to be a part of a liberal arts and sciences university. Diversity is important. All this is only ensured if we have a diverse student body. All this is again only possible if it is highly funded. 150 plus founders helping Ashoka like that figure out if there is a university who does that. Intent of the university should be making you leaders and not just make you employable. And if you've heard about the new education policy, technically that's exactly what it's asking all schools and universities to be. So there would be now universities who will be forced to be liberal, right? So you got to investigate. In a university, is it being forced to be liberal, or are they liberal because the root is so strong and that's what the intent was when they set up the university altogether? So even universities like IITs, IIMs, and all that in time would convert into a liberal arts and sciences university in that sense within India because of the new education policy 2020. Niru, by that, I really conclude to what liberal education is. I'll be more than happy to take questions, and let's see how I can help all the audience who are here today.
Thank you so much. It has been a very interesting and insightful presentation, and I'm sure our student body would have understood what exactly liberal education means. Well, we do have a couple of questions for you. How does Ashoka realize liberal education at the undergrad level?
Okay. So if I could share my screen, I would like to show a few aspects again from an undergrad perspective. So at the undergrad perspective, you got to understand that Ashoka University, apart from the things I've mentioned, which should be a part of a liberal education background, there's also the way the undergrad program is structured that makes it liberal. So for that, you understand that the concept of four pillars which define the undergrad program at Ashoka: the foundation courses, majors and minors, co-curriculars, and the post-grad diploma of advanced studies and research. Let's understand the first three aspects, columns over here. The foundation, as the word suggests, is intended to broaden you up, undo a few things which might have happened in your school, right? Undo in the sense of bucketizing you, putting you in sciences, commerce, and humanities. So, yes, at Ashoka, there is no division like that. So, every student, irrespective whichever background you come from, is put in foundation, and you don't have a choice, but you have to do them all. So, right from introduction to critical thinking, literature and the world, quantitative thinking, principles of sciences, environmental studies, Indian civilization, economics, politics and society, mind and behavior, great books, you do them all. So, you might have students who might be worried because of a few subjects they're reading over here, because that's probably the reason they did not choose that, stream in their class 11th and class 12th. But that's intended, because the real world does not allow you to escape from that conversation of something than the other. The real world would really take you heads on with any conversation, and you got to understand that. But it becomes another opportunity for you to explore that subject from a different eye. And the reason I'm saying that is because in school, I remember I used to like a subject because the teacher was nice, or I did not like a subject because the teacher was not nice, right? And that's why I chose a stream, because it was more favorable for me to do that subject, right? Or probably the way the classes were structured or the questioning aspect of it, I did not like it, so probably I dropped it completely. And the reason I say that is because a lot of students, after appearing the foundation, really open up, widen up, and create opportunities for themselves they themselves did not think earlier. So that's what the foundation really does for you. But then the conversation goes depth in terms of a major, minor, and a co-curricular. So there is a list of two major columns you see over here: a pure major and an interdisciplinary major. So you could do the entire foundation as mandatory, one major as a minimum requirement, minor zero minimum requirement, you could ignore it completely, and two co-curriculars as a minimum requirement. But if I show this still might look confusing. So let me take to you another slide. Imagine your undergrad program like this T-shaped program, in which the pure major or interdisciplinary major which you're planning to do is that depth which you're intending for your program. And the foundation, co-curriculars and minors, gives you that breadth. And you could really go beyond that minimum requirement of what I spoke of, a pure major being one or interdisciplinary major being one, and taking co-curriculars to more than two and taking minors to more than zero. So now take an example. I want to create a company who could create a company like Facebook, right? So what do I need to do? Historically, would do BTech computer sciences or BSc computer sciences. But is Facebook all coding? Answer is no. Economics. Facebook makes money. Yes, that's a big part of it. But Facebook also has the capacity of altering people's decisions and minds. Psychology. Mark Zuckerberg was called on a courthouse hearing a few years back when he was questioned on something which was ethics. Ethics is not a study of computer sciences. Though he was called in a courthouse, it is not even a study of law. It is a study of philosophy, right? So you could create combinations like these and see for yourself for what works for you. Now let's go back to that slide and now see it. So if you understand that concept of the foundation widening you up, and the initial 1.5 years, what Ashoka allows you to explore. So you might have a certain pre-thought mind of you want to do computer sciences or any major which is listed, or an interdisciplinary major which is listed. You could join that. Don't like it, drop it, pick something else. Don't like it, drop it, pick something else. Create combinations. I could give you a lot of examples like these. For example, if you want to be a civil servant, there's an interdisciplinary major which is politics, philosophy, and economics, right? Now this, with combination of psychology, international relations, and probably a foreign language, is something which would give you an edge if you really want to be a civil servant. Technically, you could do any major, you could be a civil servant, but that's not the point. The point is not just to do something which is a minimum requirement. Point to do is something which you're interested in, and that's something which will give you an edge over the others in terms of the real industry world is concerned, right? So look at your program like that. That's how it's liberal from a course perspective in that sense. But again, the intent is to be inclusive. If we're not inclusive and we're just exclusive, we can't create a liberal education environment for a child, right? Because only if I have people from across the world coming together in a class and a topic is being thrown like poverty, then only if the rich of the rich are sitting over there, the poor of the poor are sitting over there, the middle income group is there, people of all thoughts of mind are there, people of all geographical backgrounds are there, gender backgrounds are there, then I could discuss something as poverty, because otherwise that conversation is going to be irrelevant. In that, I'll have students of sciences, student of commerce, student of uh, humanities. I'll have combination of all those, right? Thus, the conversation would be more relevant, more actively researched for the real world, right? So that's what really conversation of a liberal at Nishoka perspective means. The fourth year really gives wings to research. Ashoka is a research based university right at the 3 year level, but the fourth year really gives you that additional research possible. Again, some pointers you could do in the fourth year. That's primarily it. Yeah, Niru?
Okay. I would want to know. We have Levisha here, probably,
Yeah, yeah.
and I would like to know her experience um, at Ashoka University studying liberal arts education. Hello, Levisha. Welcome. And we would want to know your experience at Ashoka University.
Hi, ma'am. So experience in terms of what? In terms of like experience in the university campus or like, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now, Levisha.
Okay. Or in terms of like academics.
So I'll ask you, Levisha. I think tell us something about yourself. Where are you from?
I am from Sangrur, Punjab, if any of you have heard of it.
Right. It's a small town, 80 kilometers away from Ludhiana, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, had you heard of Ashoka when you joined Ashoka? Like, obviously, you'd heard of it, but prior to that, have you ever heard of Ashoka?
No, I just I was really interested in reading books, and I just really liked reading. So I thought I would be interested in studying literature, but I didn't want to go to DU. So I
Right.
would just keep looking in like 12th standard. I would just keep looking for universities in India, which have like a good curriculum for literature and which have good faculty. So
Mhm.
it's just one day I come across Ashoka, and then I went through the official website. I reached out to a few seniors, and that is how I like learned more about it, and that is how I decided that I would want to go there.
So, let me ask you a question. We just explained the foundation, the majors, and the minors. So, you
Hmm.
were clear from day one, you were intending literature, right?
Hmm. I went to Ashoka with literature in my mind, but then when I went there and I saw that, everything's open. Like you don't have to do literature because you're good at it or you're interested in it, or mainly because you don't know much about other subjects. So when I went there, my mind started to change, and then I thought I might also like psychology, and I thought I might also like philosophy, because I was never a sciences person. So like in Ashoka, you get this flexibility where you get to try introductory courses where you get to take a course for a full semester. So you study the subject, and then you can or you cannot major in it. That's a choice. So basically, you study the subject, and then you decide whether you want to pursue a major in that or you don't want to pursue a major in that. So I took a psych course, and I realized that it still had science in it, something I just I was running away from since class 10th. So that, like, after taking that course, I decided that I did not want to pursue psychology. I would want to stick to literature. But you get that flexibility. And there's another thing I would want to share. So like sir just explained, you also have minors. There's a minimum requirement where you should do a major, and then you have minors, in the sense that so for a major you need like 12 courses, but for a minor you just need 6 courses. So it's like a mini major type of thing. But so initially I thought I would do a minor in journalism, but then I decided that, so when I took different courses, I decided that even the idea of a minor is very restrictive for me. It's about like personal preferences. So I decided that it's very restrictive, so I would, instead of doing like 6 courses in journalism, I would rather do like one course in pol science and one course in history and two in journalism, to just widen the horizon of the knowledge and my experience at Ashoka. So that is what I chose for myself. And there are friends who do minors, who do like 2 minors, or a minor with a concentration. A concentration is just like 4 courses. So you can really like do that mix and match thing, or you can just try different things out and see what works for you. So in that sense, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to do.
Right.
Labisha, I
This
would want to ask, sorry, when do you declare your major? Like you choose your subjects. So when exactly you have to declare your major?
So after like in the third semester, so after like 1.5 year, you are supposed to declare the major, but you can change it. Like I didn't know it back then when I was a
Okay.
student. We were told that you have to declare it today and you'll not be able to change it ever. But now that I'm graduating this semester, we were supposed to fill the details that was supposed to be on our degree, and we could still change it. So it's really until the last moment. But like whatever you major in, you should decide it by an ideal time so that you have enough time to complete the courses, because you also have to meet the requirements. But yeah.
And
to
you
help
do have
understand
this.
that better, every major has a certain credit requirement, and within
Mhm.
the 3-year program, the student has to complete that credit requirement to complete that major. So, in case a child has really done 2 majors, he or she still gets 1 degree, right? So, if I've done a dual major, then I would have to really choose what name of the degree I really need. So, I could have done a major in English and psychology, and I could choose one of the degrees for that matter, which I'll get. I'll not get a dual degree, but your transcripts would really speak of both, right? So that is the conversation which really happens at the end, which we really ask you. Just choose a major for that matter. You completed it, in which you really get your degree, because your credit requirement would have to be completed for that degree to be awarded to you.
And one more thing, Ashoka University has critical thinking seminars. So I want to know more about it from you. And what did you do like during that program?
So we have like 2 types of critical thinking seminars. There's one you take in Sem 1 and another in Sem 2. So the one you have in semester 1, which is the basic CTS, so basically the whole struct. I think so. I was from CBSE board, and the whole structure of academics at Ashoka is very different from how you're taught or how you study at CBSE. So I think the CTS one, what it does for you is that it introduces you to that structure, because it's a totally different way of doing things. You're not given in school, you're given notes, you learn them, you study them, and then you appear for an examination. And but at Ashoka, it's like, you're given a text, and what matters is this what is the sort of discussion you have on it, and how you think about it, and how then you put those thoughts in writing. So what CTS 1 did for us was just do all of this over the course of one semester. So we were taught right from what is a summary, how to write a summary of a piece, to how to critically analyze a piece. So that was basically what we were taught in CTS 1. And in CTS 2, so in the second semester, when you take a CTS, it's not the same for everybody. Like we had a batch of 460 students, and it's not the same. So different professors are taking it, and everybody has their expertise in a different subject. So it depends. So I took one in literary journalism. So it was based on that. We did a lot of things, like there were various assignments. So we had to make podcasts. We were a literary jury, so we were given 3 books. We were divided into groups, and we had to pick one winner out of the 3 books. And all three would be great books. So there were like various assignments through which you steer through that, and you learn all of it. And obviously there are a lot of discussions on why you did this and why you did not do this. So that is how you just I think discussion forms a really huge part of the academic curriculum at Ashoka.
That's
So
interesting. I really love this part. of liberal education. And now to you, Harpreet, what is liberal education is pretty different from traditional education, and what does a student need to do, and what are the basic requirements to get into Ashoka University?
Right. So just adding to one thing which Levesha last spoke of, the critical thinking is really the base of liberal education, right? And what it really does is it opens up from a rote learning to being something as a research oriented student, right? So rather than focusing on an answer, to being curious enough and staying in the question itself and going beyond an answer, that's what critical thinking as an aspect should do. And that's why we do it in the first sem as an introduction, and then take it blockwise in terms of what your interests are and break it down into various subgroups, right? Now, if you understand the conversations which you have just done, you'll now understand it's not normal curriculum which normally so happens within any traditional university or something which a student has experienced till date in a school, right? So if you could show my screen, I have a small slide to share. So what takes to be a part of Ashoka is thus not a merit quota funding based admission process. That's how normally a student gets admitted within India. There are four stages of an application. The first stage really is the application and assessments. The application really talks about a few aspects which are cut copy paste from whatever data points you already have. For example, academic scores, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Yes, 11th. A lot of students get surprised because 11th is not considered that important as a score to be mentioned for university admissions. But yes, 10th, 11th, 12th scores are important. If you have given the SAT or the ACT, great. If not, don't worry about them. They are completely optional. There are personal essays, and this is where it starts getting personal because this is not cut, copy, paste now. There are three questions which we ask you, and they're all about you. They're nothing to do with the subjects, they're nothing to do with anything else, they're only about you. And why do I say they're difficult is because all the effort a child has really put till this time is about knowing the world, and less effort has been spent on knowing about themselves. So these three questions really become difficult for a child to answer. Minimum, I see 2 to 3 weeks time is what a child takes to write an essay, right? So these are three personal questions which we ask. Then there is one letter of recommendation. Again, could come from anybody. It could be a teacher, counselor, principal, but it could really be somebody from outside your school, right? Till the time it is not family. The idea is to know you. So whatever representation you could best do to represent saying you're a liberal student, Ashoka University is a good match. That match is what we're looking at. We're not saying we want the best student because the definition of best for everybody is different. And when I speak to parents, every parent really believes that the child is the best. We're not denying that. We're just checking, are you a right fit for Ashoka or not? That's all what we're checking, right? Then there are non-academic engagements. And when I speak to students about non-academic engagement, they say we have certificates. I'm not interested in certificates. What we're really interested in is, have you engaged in them? So even if you don't have a certificate and you have engaged, we're interested in them. But if you just have a certificate and you have not engaged with that, you would get rejected. That is, the case at Ashoka. That's one part of the application. Then comes assessments, and these are mandatory assessments. For example, the Ashoka aptitude assessment. It's not an entrance test. It's a part of the application process itself. There is no cutoff. It's one of the aspects which is used to evaluate you. And then there is an on-the-spot essay on a topic which we give you. Again, the intent is not to know if you know the answer to that or not, but really to assess you how you think, right? That's what the first stage does. Once you've done the first stage and you clear it, you come to stage two, interview. It's a panel interview in front of two people. If you clear that, we declare a decision. You got a seat, did not get a seat. If you did not get a seat, what are the further categorizations? Only if you get a seat, we ask you, can you afford this? If you say yes, you pay the fees, you're done. If you say no, you're going to apply for financial aid. Whatever money you cannot afford, Ashoka pays for it. So if you can't afford a single rupee, then your entire education is free, including your residential, food, tuitions, whatever you cannot afford. If you can afford a certain percentage, then whatever percentage you can't afford is what we pay. If you can afford completely, you don't get a single rupee in terms of merit-based scholarship. You need to know this. This is very unique to Ashoka. This has to be understood from all. students to know, because we are need blind as an admission policy. We don't look at your pocket to give you a seat or not to give you a seat. But once we have given you a seat, we ask you, can you afford this or you cannot afford this? Hiru.
Yeah, as a counselor, even I advise all my students to be authentic and to write from your heart. All your essays, they cannot be copied from anywhere else. It has to come, you have to show your depth in your application, whatever activity you do. And we advise them to do that activity with your heart and just not for the application. Well, Harpreet, you've been mentioning about the diversity and inclusivity in liberal arts education. I just want to know, how diverse is the student body in Ashoka?
Well, I have a slide just for that. So there is social economic diversity, which ensures that students from all economic backgrounds come together for a class structure. So 42% students in the batch of 2023 were on some form or the other financial aid. We took 561 students that year. 102 were on full 100% scholarship. 6.3% students were from family income who has income less than 2 lakh rupees in a year. And 6% was first generation college goers. If I see all the numbers of all students we have admitted till date, students on financial aid are greater than 50%. So financial aid is one diversity. Again, anybody who's got financial aid is not a minority. It's not a marketing gimmick which we're doing. We're really doing this to ensure a diverse student body is there. But it's also geographic cultural diversity. 561 students from 18 countries, 105 cities, 342 schools. That's geographical diversity, cultural diversity, but also gender diversity. 56% of them women, 43% men, 1% neutral gender. So diversity is not just these data points which you see, but it's also diversity from a thought perspective. And if you see the application process, which I've just explained, that thought process is also evaluated to ensure we have a diverse thought class, right? That's what diversity means to Ashoka, and these are data points to kind of prove it. Neeru?
Okay. Well, another question is India ready for liberal arts education?
Well, you could take off slide. We could all be without slides now. So, answer is India has always been asking that we got to do something about our education system, because you have companies now crying that most educated are unemployed or we really need to train them again in some form or the other. This has been the cry for so long, right? The new education policy with the government has really come up with, it's again crying out loud that this is the need of the hour. We got to do it now. In the absence of this, students used to really travel outside India and go to top universities across the world, right? So is the industry ready? Answer is yes. And also from a data point perspective, that's why majority higher end resources at any company used to get hired from a top university outside India. Not because it was a top ranked university, because apparently it required a liberal nature person to be there at that position to manage things on a wider level, right? And if you really study an operational model of a company, you would know there is a triangle which they all create. And the higher you go, the lesser specific knowledge you got to have, the more skill sets you need to manage a wider aspect of things. That's what a company's model would look at. If you look at an MBA program, what people used to talk about, do an engineering, do an MBA, and then join a company from a different perspective. Well, you leaving engineering, do an MBA only because to get a different angle than engineering, right? And then planning to enter an MBA. That's what you're intending to do. And liberal education just does not limit you from doing X and then doing Y. We're saying, let's do X, looking at Y and Z at the same time together. And let's see how it works in the real world. That's what liberal education is. And yes, it is the demand from that perspective.
I believe there's an interdisciplinary course in computer science. It's computer science and entrepreneurship, if I'm not wrong. So I think that's a very good interdisciplinary program. And more often, I have seen computer science with ethics, and philosophy. A lot of universities abroad are coming up with these kind of interdisciplinary programs. And that
But Neeru, you
helps in
could
the
really
industry.
go a step beyond that. You could really say biology, computer sciences, and entrepreneurship. You could say physics, right?
Yes.
You could the options of you linking computer sciences with mathematics, data sciences, right?
Yes.
You're looking at biology from a neurological angle of how computing should work in the future, right?
I think
There are a lot of
computational biology is, computational biology is one program which is the in thing and is a requirement, especially COVID times. Yeah. So this is awesome. And like, what are your undergrads like? What are their prospects of undergrad at Ashoka? Are they going for jobs, or are they going for post graduation? I just want to know the statistics of Ashoka University.
Sure. So obviously, not everybody looks for a job after an undergrad, right? Now the norm has changed. Undergrad, then do a master's. Many ask for a PhD, depending on what kind of a role they want to play in the society in that sense. But whoever looks for a job at Ashoka gets a job. So median salary which a student gets at Ashoka is 10.5. Highest salary package somebody has got is 25 lakhs. That's a data perspective. But it's a young university. 2014 is when we started the first batch. And we have students who have gone to top universities like Cambridge, Cornell, Columbia, Chicago, Sciences Po, University, Emberley, LSC, New York University, Brown, ISB, NUS, Graduate Institute, Geneva, and so on. And these are all top ranked universities across the world. And the reason I am mentioning all this is because these universities are right there in terms of somebody's aspiration is concerned. And if Ashoka is able to produce such students as a younger university and able to send students there or get selected there, then obviously be doing something which is worthwhile for the world to accept. So, from a job perspective, or from an undergrad to a master's PhD perspective, students are going everywhere.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. One last quick question from you, Lavisha. We are running short of time. Our next session is going to start. What is the residential life at Ashoka? This is one of the questions which the students want to know. Just a quick answer for that.
I think the residential life is really good. So you have your room. So there's twin sharing rooms, and you have a kitchen. So it's well furnished. You have a refrigerator. You have an oven. You have some
Okay.
utensils. You have the whole space. So it's really nice, I think.
Let me
Awesome.
ask you this question, Levesha, from another perspective. It was a different city altogether. Was there a need, or was it taking care of all your requirements from a residential perspective? Or was it something you ever felt left out, that you're not close to home, or things which you missed in that perspective? Obviously, home cooked food, but apart from that, was there culture enough for you to grow mentally and from your academic perspective?
Yeah, definitely. Like at the in the residential halls, you have your own events which you share with your floor mates so that you can bond with them, and you have dorm Olympics. You have like various events, and you have a resident assistant for each floor, like who's a senior who you can go to for any problem, and or you can just go to them and chat up. Like you have office hours every day, and so it's a like very very inclusive culture. Yeah.
And to
Wonderful.
add to that, Neeru, technically, the vibrant student body is all Ashoka really praises, right? And the student body in terms of clubs, societies, which we have, more than 55 plus societies, clubs, which we have, that's a great place for students to, use that energy there, right? But it really goes beyond that. It's a full residential campus. You have your faculties there 24/7, libraries access 24/7. The campus is on, right? At any point of time, you'll have students studying or playing or being part of any activity. And that's the requirement of Ashoka to be a resident student. You can't really be studying or living outside Ashoka and studying at Ashoka, because the model does not allow research if you're really going to leave campus, because you would be in peer groups to do your research, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Such an amazing session we had about Ashoka, about liberal arts education. Thank you so much, Harpreet. Thank you, Lavisha, for this session. And for all the students who are going to join us for the next sessions by psychology by Flame University, please join the link again. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Thank you.
Lavisha. Thank you, Neeru.
Thank